Hey party people, Techno here, and in this video I have an ABUS 5540 to take a look at. This is a rather small and light-duty brass-bodied padlock with a hardened steel shackle. In fact, it's very similar in form factor to the Masterlock 140 we looked at in the last video. Now in the video about the Masterlock 140, we took a look at all the design flaws in this lock that led to numerous security vulnerabilities and a couple bypass techniques. And to my mind, the most egregious among those is susceptibility to an overlift attack using a tool called a comb pick. These are cheap and readily available, come in a variety of form factors. This one is a combination tension wrench and comb pick. But effectively what this allows is a no-skill attack where we insert this into the lock core, align it to those pins, push all of the pins above the shear line of the lock into the Bible, and then we can open the lock much as if we had had the key. And I personally think this is the most problematic because to a casual observer, there's very little to differentiate the act of bypassing this lock with this tool to that of the actual owner of the lock using the actual key to open it up. And that's why I think that is the most problematic out of all of the problems that this lock suffers, which let's not understate any of those. It's just not a very good lock. So my recommendation would be you don't use a Masterlock 140 for securing any kind of valuables, at least nothing that costs more than the lock itself does. And in that case, if you're not going to use the Masterlock 140, what are some similar form factor locks that are going to do a better job in that role than the Master 140? It would be hard to do worse, but we definitely want to find something that's better. Perhaps the ABUS 5540 fits that bill. And that's what we're going to take a look at in this video. So a note about, in my mind, I would say that these are low security locks. These are, kind of a light duty application. So what ideally would a lock that is good at this role be able to accomplish? Well, to my mind, it would be completely unreasonable to expect a lock of this physical construction, this size and shape to withstand a determined destructive attack for any amount of time, but that's okay. What I'm really looking for, or what I think is probably most important in a lock like this, is the lack of flaws that allow for a surreptitious bypass of the lock. So basically looking to eliminate those low skill or no skill attacks, and then leaving, if you want, let's say, expedited entry into the lock, leaving physical destruction as the best option there. When it comes to skilled lockpicking, probably in that case, it's a little bit more difficult. But if this can thwart, let's say, a very novice picker, if it can thwart raking attacks, that would be ideal. But at the end of the day, we want to eliminate those sort of low skill attacks that also could be carried out quickly and easily, even if maybe there were people present. If you're going to pick a lock, that's going to be a bit more noticeable than doing something like this comb picking attack. And even shimming a lock is going to be a lot more suspicious looking than something like this. So that's kind of my standards by which I'm going by, which are based on nothing more than my opinions for what that's worth. Now, back to the 5540. This, like the Master 140, is a 4-pin lock. It does have security pins in the core. It has spool pins, again, like the Master 140. And we also have a spring-loaded locking pawl here. So you can see that spring-loaded locking pawl down in the shackle hole there. That would lead us to the assumption that much like the 140, this could be easily shimmed. However, that wasn't my experience in using this particular lock. All I managed to do was destroy a number of shims trying to shim this. And at a certain point, I just gave up because a couple reasons. I didn't want to destroy any more of the shims that I had, and the other side of that is the time that I had invested in trying to shim this lock. We've already met a threshold that I think it successfully warded that off. For what it's worth, I have a sample size of 1, so this is all based on one particular lock and the tools that I have available, and obviously my skills, which are not certainly not the best that are out there. So with those caveats out of the way, one thing I noticed, though, when I was taking a closer look at the way that this locking pawl is situated in the shackle hole is, say, opposed to the Master 140, which was pretty easy to shim. In the Master 140, we have the spring-loaded locking pawl right there, and from side to side, it pretty much fills in the entire diameter of the shackle hole, such that there's really no it transitions very nicely from the wall of the shackle hole over to the spring-loaded locking pawl. If you were riding that shim, that piece of metal along this wall, as you do, it's going to eventually meet the corner of the front of the spring-loaded locking pawl, and as you continue to put pressure on that, just gradually move that out of the way and push it back into the lock body against that spring. No issues there. What I found with the ABUS 5540, by comparison, is that the spring-loaded locking pawl in this is slightly smaller than the overall diameter of the shackle hole, and it actually leaves a distinct, I guess you would call it like a ledge there between the shackle wall and the locking pawl. There is a notch where if you were sliding that shim across that shackle wall and into the locking pawl, you don't encounter the front of the locking pawl. You actually end up on the side of it and pushing against the side of the locking pawl into the lock body. So in effect, trapping that piece of metal, and with enough pressure, you're only going to destroy that shim, as I did. You're not going to be able to budge that locking pawl at all. So I have to assume that this was an intentional design feature, specifically designed to thwart shimming the lock, even though it is easy enough to get shims in between the shackle and the lock body. That seems to be a design feature that effectively thwarts that shimming attack on the shackle. Would it be better to have a dual ball bearing locking system in this lock? Sure. But is this an effective solution, and is it better than the 140? Absolutely. So with the shackle aside, that's one bypass out of the way. That's not going to be very easy to carry on or to carry off. So what we have then is the core. How does this withstand picking attacks? We saw on the 140 that even with the spool pins in there, single pin picking was pretty simple. And then it was even possible to rake that lock. Again, sample size of 1, although I have experience with multiple 140s and I found that to be universally true among them. How does this core stand up to a picking attack? Well, let's go ahead and see. So I'm going to use the top of the keyway tensioner here, as well as my Sparrow's Tron pick in 25 thousandths. Keyway is more paracentric than what you're going to find on the 140 if we just compare those. The 140 is pretty much wide open. There's warding there, but it doesn't get in the way of anything at all. And a little bit more paracentric, not crazy, not amazing on the ABUS. It's almost like a mirrored M1 keyway actually, but better than what the 140 has. And it doesn't necessarily get in the way of your picking too much, but it could complicate other things like, I don't know, raking or the further bypass attacks. So let's start with pin 1. Pin 1 is binding. Slight click out of pin 1 and some counter rotation. And after just a tiny bit of counter rotation that popped in, now we're in a false set. So pretty sure we were on a spool there, and a spool that was situated kind of right at the lip with that pin stack arrangement. So now on to pin 2. And with pin 2, we have felt that slide right into the, I would say, the waist of the spool. So counter rotation now. I'm going to try to set this by releasing a little bit of pressure and working that into place. And that was a little bit more than what I wanted to go for. So let me drop that back down. Just out of fear of oversetting that particular pin. Okay, so I think we're good on that one. Let's go to pin 3. Counter rotation on pin 3, just a slight click out of that. And pin 4. And counter rotation. I already heard a pin drop there. So feels like that was 2 that actually dropped down and 1 dropped down. All right, so now we're in a pretty deep false set. There must still be one of these that needs to be set. And I think it is pin 2. Pin 3. Oh, pin 3 was down. Pin 4. lost my false set there, so I just let one of those pins drop back down. So we can already see that for a 4-pin lock, this is actually putting up a pretty decent fight. I'm pretty sure everything in here is a spool pin, so it's just a matter of getting those all set into place without dropping any of the other ones. And pin 1 seems to be acting much like a gatekeeper. I can't seem to set a whole lot else in this lock without dropping pin 1. So there we got 1 set, we got 2 set, 3. And again, pin 1 is dropping down and needs to be set once more. And pin 4. Okay, pin 1 consistently slowing me down on that one. So definitely not a record time getting into that lock. I have picked it faster, but suffice it to say, this is a actually pretty impressive out of a 4-pin core and significantly better than the 140. So I also don't think, given all of that, you're going to be too successful carrying off a raking attack. So we can just kind of skip that in the interest of time. Significant improvement there with the core, even though it only has 4 pins. So the last thing we kind of want to take a look at here is, of course, the thing that I keep harping about, and that is the overlift attack with the comb pick. Now, again, due to the keyway in comparison to the 140, that paracentric keyway is going to make it just a bit more difficult to situate this comb pick within the lock versus the 140, where it's wide open, very easy to get in there. So this is going to take a little bit more care in aligning everything and getting it situated. It's going to be just a little bit more fiddly than the 140. But if we position this appropriately, we still will be able to get it properly aligned. And almost in there, kind of slipped off that warding. And there we go. So like I said, just positioning it properly, and it does slide right up in there. It's not a great sign because we are at the top of the lock. So let's give this a try. And there we go. I don't really know what's more disappointing. A lock that is just completely flawed and really doesn't have any redeeming qualities, or a lock that does so well in all of those other categories, only to have it all undone by, again, a very well-known, an old, a simple bypass technique that requires no skill, just the tool. So again, yeah, we saw that it took a little bit more doing. And of course, I'm not looking directly at the keyhole here because I'm sort of offset from the camera. It took a little bit more to get that properly positioned within the lock body. But suffice it to say, once you do have it properly aligned in there, it is no more difficult to carry this off than it would be on the master lock. So that is rather disappointing on this particular ABUS. I would say that this is not going to be a suitable replacement for the Master 140. It is, in all respects, a much better lock. It's got better manufacturing tolerances, definitely a better core, thwarts that shimming attack quite nicely, all of those things over the 140, but still the most problematic exploit can be carried off, or can be pulled off on this particular lock, and I think that is going to disqualify it. So moving forward, we'll evaluate some more locks in this particular form factor, and we'll find the ones that actually do warrant being used in these, again, low security applications. So hopefully that was informational. Hopefully that was enjoyable. I do truly appreciate everybody who watches this. Until next time, guys, yeah, that's all I have for this video. So take care, and I will catch you later.